Hello and welcome back to Craftersations. So, since last time, let's see, I finished this. So, I believe this is what I was working on last time. So, here's how that one turned out. Kind of like it. And then here's what I'm working on now. Almost done with it. I've got a couple craft fairs coming up in the next couple months. So, like I said in a previous Craftersation, I'm trying to get my stock built back up from after the holidays. So, been doing pretty good. Anyway, welcome to crafting. If you don't have your craft in front of you, maybe hit pause and go get whatever it is that you're working on, whatever craft you're in the middle of, or just a comforting beverage, and let's have a chat. All right, get myself set up here. Alrighty. Okay. So my mother was going through some boxes that had some of the belongings of my grandma, who passed several years back, and she found something that had my handwriting in it, like an old school notebook, right? My grandmother, I don't know if she had stock in these companies, but she had them. She had a lot of them, and she did everything in them. I remember camping, she would have like a to-do list on one side, and then she would have like the groceries and things that we needed to buy on the other, and then at the bottom almost like a summary of events from the day, because she also kept journals, and it was like how she reminded herself of what happened that day or who she talked to, or that was my grandmother. So my mom saw this, and she's like, Janelle, is this your handwriting? I said, yeah, actually, that, my handwriting from like high school, probably. And when I was reading it over, I realized that it was from a computer game that my grandmother and I played, on an old school Macintosh. It was called Fool's Errand. I had to look it up because I couldn't remember the name. I knew it had something to do with like a quest, and there were a lot of puzzles. My grandmother loved puzzles. I don't know if you're familiar with Games Magazine, but she was an avid, loyal subscriber. And so she loved puzzles. And so this game was all about puzzles. And it was also fashioned a lot of the characters around the characters of the tarot deck, which is what stuck in my mind. So, I had to do a search, like old Macintosh game based on tarot deck characters, and it came out, Fool's Errand. So, and I remember we spent months playing this game and trying to solve all the puzzles and riddles. And so this notebook was how we kept track of the progress that we made, because sometimes you would, you'd fail at a puzzle, or you'd get kicked back, or you just have to sleep, so you'd have to turn the game off. And so that's how we kept track of the answers that we'd figured out, or the steps that we'd successfully taken. And so this notebook brought back memories, of course. And it was kind of striking that my mom recognized my penmanship, because it's definitely not the penmanship that I have today. It's the high school me penmanship. And as I was flipping through, I also, of course, my grandmother and I were doing this together. So there were some instances where my grandmother's penmanship was there as well. And I love my grandmother's penmanship. Seeing her penmanship is like seeing her again. Like, I can picture her hand holding her pen and the way that her hand moved as she wrote. And she had these really unique pens, like these thick plastic cylinder pens. I don't even know what brand they were, but she bought those probably by the dozen too. My grandmother was very particular. When she found something she liked, she stuck with it. But anyway, it got me thinking, because I can see something that she's written, and it's like being with her again. Not that dissimilar from when you smell someone's perfume or cologne. Same thing with my grandmother. She had a very distinct, like, signature scent, and it brings you back to them. So her penmanship is like that for me. It's very distinctive. And I began wondering, in this modern age where there's not nearly as much that we write down anymore, so much is digital, right? We text, we email, we instant message. So what are we leaving behind for our children and our grandchildren? Are they going to have memories like this, where they look at something that we wrote and it brings them back? It ignites a memory, or it ignites an emotion, like this notebook did for me with my grandmother. And so I think about my children, and I don't as much anymore, and I want to. It's something that I told myself I need to do again. But I used to write them little notes at night, and then I'd leave them on their doors or on their headboard, so they would see it when they woke up. Just little notes of encouragement or love or pride. I'm proud of you, and something that they had done that day. So, and it's funny, I know my oldest son has kept them, because there's times when I've been helping him clean his room or look for things in his room, and he still has them. And that makes me really happy. So anyway, so I know that he has these, and I believe that my younger son does too. So they have samples of my writing. And as an adult, my writing has pretty much stabilized. I recognize it. I think they recognize it too. So they have that. And it's not, like I said, I think it's something, I actually have this idea of where I want to get notebooks for both of them. And then I have these talking point cards, so like I can put a different prompt on each page and then have them respond to the prompt and have kind of like a back and forth conversation. But then it would also be a physical, like a primary document, right, in history, with both their writing and my writing, and kind of a record of where their thoughts were. So anyway, it's something I want to do. I just have to do it. So anyway, they have these pieces of me. And my mother really likes giving gift cards at holidays. And so, of course, there's always signatures in there. So I know that they have pieces of my mother's writing, their grandmother. But do kids nowadays, are they establishing a signature penmanship style? What are their kids going to see of them? And I know penmanship is not emphasized in school, or at least it wasn't. I think that tide is turning. My boys went to a traditional school, so they actually had to learn cursive in 3rd grade. They learned what was called Spalding cursive, and they had to use it. And so I know both my boys have this in them. They've been taught, proper penmanship. Whether they use it or not, Although, fun story, my older son has gotten into his first relationship, and he wrote his girlfriend this very long love letter, essentially. and he used his cursive. And he was very, very proud of it. I mean, to the point where he showed me the letter, he had me read it, and he expressed pride in how he wrote it. So I know that my older son at least takes pride in his penmanship when it matters. When it matters. But if he had never learned cursive, he wouldn't have had that foundation to build on, right? To modify and to create something that is now uniquely his. And so it makes me wonder, these children coming up in school now where they're not necessarily actively taught penmanship, or they're taught it but there's no expectation of mastery, will they have that? How will they be able to develop their signature writing? Is that even seen as something that's important anymore because everything is digital? So I'm a teacher, and I remember this was several years back now, but I had one of my older students, my upperclassmen, so either junior or senior, and she had made this comment, and it struck me as so sad at the time, and it still does. She's like, "Miss, if I don't know cursive," because she was never taught cursive. She's like, "If I don't know cursive, how am I going to ever create my own signature?" Now, I remember in high school, and I don't know if this is a girl thing, but I remember practicing my signature and developing it to make it something that I felt represented me. Not the same signature I have nowadays, of course. But I remember it was important to me to develop a signature. I'd been taught cursive, so I understand the principles of linking letters together, and I appreciated the unique way that you could modify cursive to make it pretty or to make it you. And this student of mine felt that she would not be able to do that because she hadn't been taught cursive. So at least my boys, I feel like they have that. So at any point, they've got the foundation to build on. But how many students nowadays are going to have that? And like I said, I know some schools are going back. They're going back to teaching penmanship. They're going back to teaching cursive. There's actually research behind the value of learning cursive in terms of how the physicality of connecting letters on paper actually connects the thoughts in the brain as well. Plus, it's actually a faster way of writing once you learn it, right? It's like learning the proper way to type. You actually end up typing faster. So I know some schools are going back, but you've got this whole gap of people who are growing up and becoming adults and beginning to engage in activities that require them to sign contracts, sign paperwork, and they're entering these very adult situations feeling like potentially they're lacking in some way because they don't have a signature. How sad is that? To me, that's so sad. So it made me feel more, having this notebook for my grandmother, it made me feel more dedicated to leaving written evidence behind for my children. And then, for my eventual grandchildren, leaving little love notes or encouraging letters, things that they can tuck aside and pull out later, and it's like being with me again by seeing my writing, that physical, concrete expression of me. It might be something as a parent, as a grandparent, to think about, right? What are we leaving behind for our children and grandchildren? Are we teaching them? Are we giving them the skills to feel like they will be able to leave pieces of themselves behind? And obviously there's other ways to do this, right? You're like, well, we have pictures. They have pictures of people, or they have the memories. But I think different evidences hit different ways. I don't know, maybe for me, because writing was such a personal thing, maybe it just hit me a little harder. Maybe for people for whom writing is not necessarily, has not been an important part of their personal expression, maybe it won't be important. I don't know. Maybe I'm too old school or traditional here. But crafters kind of do this, right? We make things with our hands, with our time, with our energy and effort and love, and we do leave those behind. So I look around my house and, my boys have things that were handmade for them, sweaters, hats, mittens, so many blankets. So they have those too. So maybe it's not a matter of leaving writing behind. That just is what kind of got me thinking. Maybe it's just a matter of leaving something concrete behind, something that required something of you, your time, your effort, your love, and making sure that our children learn ways to do that for themselves too. To leave a legacy behind, a concrete physical legacy, beyond just the ephemeral memories and digital fingerprints that we seem to be leaving behind. Anyway, what are you leaving behind? How will people remember you? How will people bring you back to life for themselves when you're gone? Well, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for chatting. Feel free to leave anything in the comments that maybe this brought up for you. Comments to my questions. Things you want to talk about next time. And as always, happy crafting.